Day 13. Saint Nicholas. It is largely believed that Santa Claus is an evolution or modern version of a historical figure named Saint Nicholas, or that the true origin of Santa Claus lies with Saturn, the planet of time, structure, and materialism. Another theory suggests that Saint Nicholas's origin is an allegory for the natural cycles of winter solstice occurring both in the sky and in our bodies. The evidence for the historical existence of a literal figure named Saint Nicholas primarily comes from written records that developed over time but aren't from the actual time when he was said to live. However, in the Vedic Kathopanishad, written between 800 BCE and 200 BCE, we have the story of Nachiketa, or Nachiketa, which is Sanskrit for Nicholas. The story goes that Nachiketa dies and goes to the abode of Yama, the Lord of Death, associated with Saturn, where he lingers for approximately 3 days, a significant time period, as we know and as explained in many other offerings, before he is resurrected. This story, known as Amrita Mantham, is often depicted in ancient Hindu stories, and Saint Nachiketa, Saint Nicholas, is shown driving a chariot-like sledge loaded with favours or gifts that are meant for the good of mankind. Nachiketa flies a Vani Prami, a reindeer, through the air, distributing celestial gifts to all mankind, including the knowledge of life after death, so cosmic rebirth. Although there are many similarities to the Christmas narrative within this rendition, the details appear to pertain more to solstice and celestial bodies and the rebirth of the sun than to a historical person. There are many other versions and variations of this legend worldwide, although that is the oldest that I can find. For example, there's Saint Nicholas of Sion and Saint Nicholas of Myra, which is modern-day Turkey. These accounts were written by historians detailing the life of a bishop or a saint-type figure who performed miracles, such as healing the sick, rescuing the impoverished, and even rescuing children from the dead, all of which are reminiscent of the acts of Jesus Christ and other solar deities or people that became enlightened metaphysicians and who were able to perform such miracles. Earlier in the series, we've discussed how the stories of Santa Claus and Jesus coincide with the natural cycles of winter solstice, both in the macro and microcosms. But how does Saint Nicholas's story coincide with this? What's really interesting is that Saint Nicholas of Myra was known as patron saint of the seas and patron saint of children. Now, these titles immediately bring hidden meanings to mind. Saint Nicholas being dubbed Saint of the Seas can be metaphorically linked to the idea of guiding and safeguarding the fluids of the earth, so the macrocosm, and the body, microcosm. Symbolically speaking, seas signify the salty oceans of the body, i.e. vital fluids like CSF and lymphatic fluid, thus making Saint Nicholas a force that resides over or guides these currents. Just like Jesus Christ, Saint Nicholas was known for his supernatural ability to calm storms and to save people from the sea. This reflects a symbolic mastery over the fluidic lunar forces and the sun's victory over darkness and chaos as the solstice marks the return of light. Theories suggest that Saint Nicholas's role as a patron saint of children parallels the preserving and raising of procreative fluids and essences, i.e. the chi, or children, are the seed that must be saved. Perhaps the most famous legend about Saint Nicholas is him saving 3 women from prostitution, which again exemplifies the practice of chastity and retention. In There Is a Santa, renowned researcher and author William J. Federer states that, like Jesus, Saint Nicholas of Sion visited Golgotha, the place of the skull. If you're familiar with sacred anatomical codes or have read my previous books, you'll know that this fact alone points to Saint Nicholas as an archetype or symbol based on the physiological processes of the body and the macrocosmic processes that mirror them, rather than a historical figure. The feast day set aside for Saint Nicholas in many countries still to this day is the 6th of December and is positioned as a lead up to the winter solstice on December 21st, because this period is viewed and still is viewed in some Scandinavian and Nordic places as a time of inner reflection, a time to prepare for the spiritual renewal that occurs with the return of light. Many have observed that Saturn and the Sun also begin their dance in early December. It is believed that the energies of Saturn, the planet of restriction and reduction, heavily influence Earth at this time of year, creating a period where the coldness of Saturn teaches valuable lessons leading into the rebirth of the Sun at solstice. As the god of time and materiality, Saturn is seen as the silent puppet master, ushering in solstice to the tick-tock of its clock. With all this in mind, it can be seen that Saint Nicholas, the reported origin of the Santa Claus tradition, perhaps coincides with other sun gods such as Mithras, Apollo and Sol Invictus, who are also celebrated around the winter solstice, reinforcing the idea that Nicholas is part of a broader tradition of solar deities or figures representing the return of light. If you'd like to go deeper, these short daily videos are all inspired by the pages of my recent book, Christmas Alchemy, Harnessing Cosmic Energy. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for part 14, Santa Claus. May divine light manifest itself in you all, always, and in all ways. Namaste.